There. Yeah!
Oh, yeah.
Woohoo!
Welcome.
Oh, wait. All right.
Oh, there you go. Doing it safe. You are in an enclosed environment.
Yes, my identity must be concealed at all times during this show.
Yeah, I see now. It's multi-purpose. Very topical. Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome to Itz Happenin show, community grassroots media for the people, by the people. I'm Jose Gloria.
And I'm Dylan Thompson. We are your hosts tonight.
We are your hosts. Indeed. It's happening as a movement of the heart and of the mind. It's the energy of the universe that creates waves inside us and all around us, which allows us to activate, motivate, then elevate vibrationally and intellectually towards love, truth, justice, and wisdom. It's happening in every which way.
Itz Happenin is a culture of empowerment. It's people having the right to exist and participate as equals. It's a dream of what the world could be. But the future we want is only possible if we make it happen. So stand up, get informed, and fight back.
Fight back. You could be anywhere. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us. So we thank you because of you.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Woo.
Dude,
wow.
It's only took us 2 months.
We'll see on the playback.
Yeah.
Check it on YouTube later.
Check it on YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. If this is your first time, you will see that this here is our magical show where we talk about all things Santa Ana, Orange County, and across the nation and the world. Please, start your watch parties, share, like. Speaking of liking, we have reached 1,000 likes, and it only took us 5 years. Woo!
I'm glad that you had to announce that. At least, yeah, we don't have big egos, okay? But we appreciate each and every single one of those people. So.
No, yeah, totally. We thank you so very much for allowing us into your homes every other Monday or so. We appreciate that. Everybody that's stuck around through thick and thin with us here on Itz Happenin show. So that was one good news I wanted to start the show off with. And also
more good news.
I went to I went to the beach the other day.
Oh, you did.
I social distanced.
Oh.
But you know who didn't social distance? Dolphins. There was like a pod of 3 of them. Like they were like
rude.
And there was some people like really close to them.
Mm-hmm.
It was phenomenal. I don't know if anybody's ever seen dolphins by the beach, but I think it has something to do with us not being there. And they were confused. They were like, what happened?
They're back. Our plan is not working. Yeah.
Quick, send in the sharks.
And the humanoids have defied their better judgment and have returned to the beach. No, I'm sure you were responsible, Jose.
I was.
Yes, indeed. Wait, well, are there rules there though? Like, or is it just like a social custom to social distance?
I'm not sure, but I do know that there was a lot of they kept coming back and forth and stuff, but it's fine.
No.
I thought they were sharks at first, like shark, and then it was like, no, it's dolphins.
Yeah, I'll take that any day. I'll take that trade any day.
Yeah. And we are also officially on Spotify. You can find it on Spotify and on YouTube live streaming. So we're just taking ourselves to the next level. I know.
Yeah. Only slow and steady wins the race. I've always said.
That's right.
So
yeah, we're gonna have an amazing. Slow and steady. We're gonna have an amazing show. In just a bit, we're gonna have Carlos Perea and Albert Castillo joining us. We're gonna talk all things defund Santa Ana PD ? And the conversation that's happening nationwide. But it's very specific and particular, the relationship with the POA and the community here in Santa Ana. So that'll be very good. But go ahead and go through some more quick stories. Good news.
More quick stories. Subsection of quick stories. Go ahead.
Good news from the Supreme Court, United States, on LGBTQ and immigrant rights.
Oh yeah.
So, big time. As many people have now found out, the Neil Gorsuch betrayed Trump and the conservatives by voting in support of workers' rights for LGBTQ folks. So that's sexual orientation and identity is now protected by the Civil Rights Act. So just the one example of many where African Americans, Black folks in this nation have laid the groundwork for so many issues. For brown folks to LGBTQ folks to benefit from those fights and all the people that died and sacrificed so much of themselves to make sure that people are respected in the workforce and also respected at the ballot box. So,
big time.
Yeah, but also the immigrant rights was tied into this, and that was also important because they denied hearing, I believe, on the sanctuary cities policy was the other part of that.
Right. They turned away Trump's challenge to, in particular, California's sanctuary law. So.
Oh, you just wait. I'm going to get you. Just wait.
Just more justices. He just needs more justices somehow.
Man, even ones that worked with him turned against him. So.
It's good. I mean, actually, this is kind of weird. I mean, we didn't do this on purpose, but most of the stories are good stories. Because I'm just going to go to the next one. I'm just so shocked that it's good as well. So SAUSD, their board made it so that ethnic studies is required for high school graduation. It's fantastic. I think I had some of this. I didn't have a ethnic studies teacher, right? But my teacher at least taught us some of the struggles that occurred, right? That are, I think, typically glossed over in American history, right? And this is a wonderful thing. And I mean, thank all of those. I can't name all the school members that supported it, but I'm sure Carolyn Torres did, and I'm sure that she's part of this work. And so kudos to everyone involved.
Absolutely. Carolyn. I mean, I believe everybody on the school board supported it, although some people were had very long-winded and some would say unnecessary comments about what it is and what it isn't, and all the work that cannot be forgotten about the past. It's big ups to Carolyn, Alfonso, and and all the folks that fought long and hard. This is the first city in Orange County to have ethnic studies be a requirement. We need every city to have these things, to make sure our youth is supported and understanding about the issues of their identity, their history, and why it's brown is beautiful, and our history is beautiful, and our legacy and our heritage, right? So we need critical thinking, educated individuals, and we need to empower our teachers with the tools to be able to do that. And ethnic studies is that. So, yeah,
Oh yeah.
couldn't be happier or prouder for our community in this moment.
Oh yeah, and you got to be happy with Carolyn Torres and the other board members who supported this. I mean, donate to these people's campaigns because like they're delivering. So big time.
Yeah, yeah, and Carolyn Torres had her Zoom campaign launch today. So
oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, it was a really creative way to use it and make interactive parts of it and stuff. Yeah, great campaign so far.
Yeah. And next quick story is immigrants stage a hunger strike for Black lives inside ICE detention facility. So that is just one of many ways in which the intersection between abolish ICE and defund police and the issues of Black and brown communities are intersecting. Never forget that it was a Black woman that climbed the Statue of Liberty with speaking about ICE,
Right.
against ICE and all these things. So yeah, this happened in Mesa Verde Immigration Detention Center in Bakersfield. So, yeah. So
yeah. Solidarity, man.
Protest their conditions of COVID-19, but also support the Black Lives Matter movement. So yeah, solidarity.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of good news so far. I mean, that's why. Oh yeah. So I mean, maybe is this good news? The last one, Karen's Corner.
I know it's not great, but just in keeping with continuity of Karen's Corner, because Karen's are coming out of the woodworks every day.
Oh man,
they're just but some of them are getting slapped. Some would say rightfully so, but in this case, this woman was yelling, "Go back to Mexico," as she was caught on video destroying parked cars with her 2 hammers. So
2 hammers.
Get the F out of this neighborhood. Go back to Mexico. She yelled. So yeah, but then she got her ass handed to her by another neighbor. Said like, "Stop being racist. Stop it. You stop it right now." Yeah, I think it was an African American woman that was like, yeah. So
there you go. Set her straight. But I do wonder if this is kind of like police violence, if it's just like it's always been happening and now it's just recorded more often. You know what I mean? Or maybe there is a little both, a little surge of racism in these crazy times. But suspect it's a little of the other.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it's America's been racist. Now we just have more documentation of it. But let's go ahead and jump into our top stories, shall we?
Top stories.
Top stories. Dylan Thompson.
Santa Ana, California. Oh, oops. Okay, yeah. No, we skipped that part. We don't do that anymore. But yeah, our first top story here is CBP used funds for asylum seekers, food and medicine, to buy dirt bikes and riot helmets. So there was money allocated, about $112 million for consumables and medical care for migrants being held by the Customs and Border Protection Agency. Mm-hmm. But instead, they purchased things such as detention guard services, boats, all-terrain vehicles, motorcycles, dirt bikes, small utility vehicles, passenger vans for moving detainees, printers, security camera systems, speakers, HVAC upgrades for facilities, sewer system upgrades, janitorial services. So it just goes on and on of misuses of this money. And yeah, I mean, can you be shocked? I mean, I'm not.
Not at all. Not at all. This is just preposterous and all sorts of horrendous. These people need food, need medicines, but you're going to buy these things, instead.
Oh yeah, it's terrible, and it just says how I just feel it says a lot about how deep maybe that corruption is, because I mean, they didn't do much to cover it up, but everything was just done in broad daylight, and a simple investigation into this revealed all of this. So it's just like, it was so normal throughout their department that, I mean, no one questioned it inside until someone from the outside made a simple inquiry and discovered this. So, I mean, doesn't look good for CBP.
Yeah, it's like right, you shine a light into darkness and the cockroaches go running. So or you realize that you have some serious mold, and so I think that's what's happening all over. People are starting to see just how police departments are not spending their funds correctly. So that's continues to be an issue in America. Next top story.
Next story.
Oh my God. In between story. T-Mobile sucks. Yeah, this is.
Ooh, can we say that? All right, no, let's do it. Screw it. Fuck it.
Dude,
the
internet blows. And I couldn't text my friend Dylan about the show today.
And then I got 8 of them.
And all of a sudden,
I definitely got the message. Just loud and clear, buddy.
According to Business Insider, a restaurant is testing plastic shield pods to keep diners safe in coronavirus pandemic. Okay. So that is happening.
Is this like the Jetsons or what?
Yeah. It's like plastic cones suspended over faces of patrons might be the new trend for restaurants reopening their doors during the pandemic. The Plex Eat is a plastic shield created by a French designer that hands over the faces of restaurant customers to block germs from passing from one patron to the next. So he already has over 200 inquiries. The creator and bars and restaurants face unique complications reopening because customers can't eat without removing their masks. This has been a thing, and one of the highest risk places that you can go is apparently bars for this thing. People laugh and yell really loudly. It's like, hey man, really like the song.
It would work. You could do that in a pod still. But you know what? I'm just thinking like go back a year and pretend like it was a year ago and you just had to read today's news and just look at these headlines or the pictures at least of people eating in pods in a restaurant and just wonder what happened. Yeah, it just seemed I don't know. Maybe this is the new normal though. Pod eating. I mean, we had to get to the Jetsons at some point. I mean,
pod eat. Oh. I thought you were talking about Tide Pod eating.
Well, I mean, they can go hand in hand. Both are a recent phenomenon, cultural, but yeah, good times.
Good times.
Yeah, and let's go to obviously there is bad news, and we'll get to it here, but we've all heard of the killing of a man in Atlanta, Rayshard Brooks. He was shot twice in the back. His autopsy report said listed his manner of death as homicide. But it's pretty clear if you looked at that video that I mean, what else is it other than homicide? I mean, I don't know if you all watched it, but this guy's just sleeping in his car, and how does him resisting arrest in that situation warrant his execution? No. And this is exactly what we're all talking about, that these things happen all the time and no one's punished. I think in this case, the guy was actually fired for the time being.
Correct. And I believe charged with murder. Yeah, that's... and at the same time, the police chief, this woman, resigned. There's been videos that, have come out from the police car. And it shows what how it started really really calm, and it's like hey man, you're sleeping, hey, park over there and stuff, and then things escalated real quickly after people were when he he's about to get arrested, he tried to get away. There was a what is it, tuffle, a scruffle.
Yes.
Something. Yeah, there was a situation where they were trying to pin him down, and then he ran away. I think the video shows that he had the stun gun with him, but shoot him in the back. I have legit seen videos of white folks with knives, with butcher knives, going like this, get away from me, police, and others starts, I mean, people always bring up that the man that killed all those African Americans, Dylan Roof, was taken to Burger King before he got put in jail.
Yeah,
they could have handled this 100 different ways, but they chose to escalate, and they chose to shoot the man running away in the back. And that's not the first video. I remember seeing another video of a black man running away. He didn't have anything on him, and they shot him in the back. Again, because of George Floyd and all the protests, accountability and justice, or at least in the sense of charging these officers, is happening much quicker than it hasn't been since I can remember. So that's part of what the grassroots movement is saying, right? These things are helping in ways that voting and peaceful marches, we're just not doing it for years. So.
Yeah, something snapped, and I welcome any positive change, and these people being punished is a good sign. We definitely need a lot more, and we'll talk about it a bit more in the upcoming conversation, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And our last top story.
Last top story.
Yeah.
By Jose. Jose Gloria. Okay, go ahead.
That is me. So there was an article that recently came out on the Orange County Register. Encourage folks to read it. We won't be able to read it all here, but it says in Santa Ana, police reform might focus on the power of police union. So Santa Ana police might focus on, city council will consider a police commission, and residents will raise questions about officers' political clout. As the nation focuses on law enforcement and calls for police reform, a powerful player in Santa Ana politics, the Santa Ana Police Officers Association, POA, as will be called from here on out, soon might face a reckoning of sorts. Last month, the police union was powerful enough to get a sitting councilwoman recalled. That was Ceci Iglesias, who was on this show some weeks back. Last year, I got a majority of the council to approve a $25 million in pay raises before officials figured out how to pay for it last year. But on Tuesday, that same council was scheduled to begin talks about creating a police oversight commission and a contingency of residents' plans to call the online meeting to demand that city reconsider its police funding and shifting some monies to social services such as programs for young people. So I'm expecting pushback from the POA. And Carlos Perea talks about their biggest obstacles, says that they are the biggest obstacle to a democratic process in Santa Ana. In recent years, POA and particularly its president, Jerry Serrano, has been accused of forcing the ouster of top city officials and attempting to coerce council candidates to do their bidding. Two recent lawsuits against the city that involve Serrano, one filed by a former city manager and the other former police union president, have cost Santa Ana taxpayers $650,000 in settlements. Now, with protests against police brutality forcing communities to reconsider reform, the topic of police is front and center in Santa Ana. Boy, is it ever. Yeah. And with that, I want to bring onto the show Albert Castillo and Carlos Perea. So Albert Castillo is a longtime activist and the co-founder of Chicanos Unidos and the grassroots group that has fought locally against gang injunctions, supported victims of police brutality, and fought against gentrification and displacement, as well as supported college-bound community members through their community grants and scholarships. So welcome, Albert. Please join us. Start your video and unmute yourself. And Carlos Perea is an unapologetic, undocumented immigrant from Mexico. He is a public policy consultant, immigration advocate, and campaign strategist with 10 years of experience working in policy advocacy, campaign strategy, coalition building, and community organizing. Most notably, he worked on landmark policy advocacy and campaign organizing efforts to establish Santa Ana's sanctuary ordinance and universal representation program. He is currently a member of the Measure X Oversight Committee. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Right. So let's get to it. Straight to it. Albert, I'll have you start because this is the first time on the show, I think, right?
Yeah, it is, and probably the last time too. I don't do shows.
Oh snap! Well, I was like, what did we do?
But desperate times call for desperate measures.
Well, yeah, it's because things are going. We've been fighting for all this for decades. and I see it materializing, and I don't want it to die. So I'm involved again.
There you go.
Yeah, and Carlos, you've been also in the fight for a cool minute. You and I, not as long as Albert, but still very much on the have seen how this issue has played out in various ways, both politically and in the community when it comes to police brutality, and also with the POA and its force, the force that it plays in local electoral politics, and will be continue to play. It would seem. So I guess I'll put this question out for both of you, whoever wants to answer. So like, what would the defund the Santa Ana, defund the police program or campaign movement look like in Santa Ana, and how is the what is being considered at tomorrow's council meeting, like connected to that ultimate campaign?
Go ahead, Carlos, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I can start on that. And like, I think the defund movement is definitely something that has gained a lot of traction nationally and locally as well, because of the recent violence against Black people. And then for Orange County, right, we have our own history when it comes to like standing up to police abuse, but also police violence. And people talk about the quote unquote violence that happened in the streets when young people came up and essentially did an uprising in Santa Ana, right? And that exploded because it was coming for a long time. When you have a police department that gets a big share of the public safety, of the public budget, of the tax money, and when you have a police union that is purely corrupt and that has taken over City Hall, young people have been completely neglected. Not just young people, but residents as a whole, we have been neglected for a long time. So I think when it comes to Santa Ana and defunding police, it just means like literally like the bare minimum is no more additional funding for police. And as a matter of fact, we need to start cutting back on the funding, right? Whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20%, whatever that is, but reinvest it back in our community through youth programs and other services. And there's also a big movement around really reclassifying the role of police as emergency responders, right? You don't need 5, 10 cops responding to an incident, which is a very often view of what we see in Santa Ana, right? You have up to 3, 4 patrol cars that roll up for like a minor situation that might have to be, addressing a homeless person or a youngster in the street, right? That's ridiculous. We don't need 10, 15 cops, hovering around one in particular incident. We need different type of community response. So I think for Santa Ana, it can look like many, many things. It just really depends on the political courage of elected officials, which we don't have,
Yeah, that's hard to come by. And that's an interesting point you brought up, because it reminded me of this incident where some kids at a skate park were causing some trouble. They deployed like a dozen officers and a helicopter, and we asked how much that cost. It was over $10,000 just to fund that for like an hour. They could have built part of a skate park with that money, right? So I want to throw over to Albert. Like, I mean, how do you envision defunding in Santa Ana?
Yeah, I look at it from what Carlos was just saying, to actually dismantling the police department, taking it apart. They're so corrupt with the POA that they can't reform themselves. It's impossible. They have too much power. They control the mayor, city council, commissions. They control every aspect of our government here in Santa Ana. So when you say defund, it can mean a lot of things. So in my opinion, again, they can't reform, and they won't. Even if they get rid of Jerry Serrano, he's not the one that's behind this whole thing. There's another person behind him. So they'll just put another puppet in there. So I think that's dismounting, and also putting in something new. And what new looks like is something that we need to discuss. What is the new, safety procedures, or the new type of organizations or whatever it is to put in there in place of police. So these talks need to be put together. And one way is that, and I had talked a lot about it within different orgs, was putting together a think tank. When we have issues like this, that we figure out not just to how to just respond, but be a step ahead of them. And until we get there, we're always going to be responding to this type of issues.
Yeah, the conversation really right now is centered around, like, I think semantics in large parts. When people being like, oh, don't call it a sanctuary city. The Republicans are going to say this and this and that, or, like, don't say defund, say like, well, you have to move things and this and that. And like, it's all, it's like, we're always constantly playing the defensive when it comes to being bold and courageous with our language. And I see that conversation happening now. I mean, it happened around the conversation of abolish ICE not too long ago, locally in this
exactly
Democratic Party of Orange County. And constantly we're having people like, oh, they're going to call us socialists. They're going to call us socialists no matter what we do. Right. And ironically enough, because of this socialist construct, we have the police department. They are a benefit of what collective, like, public safety investment looks like. But more often than not, it just tends to be another incredible special interest, and none more so than Santa Ana. Right. I believe that Santa Ana has the largest, as far as percentage of the budget of any city in Orange County. And how did they get like that? Well, we can look at the history, right? We can look at Paul Walters, and when he was both the police chief and the city manager, and how incredible that conflict of interest was. So we're working from that place, but also, like, when in a moment when we had Chief Rojas that, potentially was trying to, weed out some bad apples. And we talked about it on previous shows, right? When he was trying to fire those folks that got caught smashing, cameras and stealing things, and they were able to get their job back. And the taxpayers had to pay for all those lawsuits, including, like we mentioned, almost, more than $500,000 of our taxpayer money going to lawsuits that the police officers, association is responsible for. Why are we on the hook for it, right? So it's like all this conversation comes in the backdrop of a decade or longer that this has happened, right? So, and I mean, right now they're kind of seeing the writing on the wall, right? So they're like, okay, fine. We'll defer until January. We'll ban or we'll suspend chokeholds. I don't know why suspend, just ban them all together. But that's their, like, olive branch. Is that enough?
No. You see, when Carlos Rojas was chief, we worked with him. We had a campaign called Stop Stealing Our Cars. I don't remember. Do you remember that campaign? Was when they were pulling over undocumented and taking away their cars and holding it for a month.
Right.
It was so expensive that they couldn't get their cars, and they were calling under checkpoints. And Carlos worked with us on that, and we were able to stop a lot of that. And finally, it just was dismantled. But so, he tried to he did fire police, as what you just mentioned. And so he was trying to clean up. The POA didn't like it. They got rid of him. They got rid of David, I forget his last name.
Cavazos.
Yeah. So, it's impossible. Like I said, it's impossible to try to reform.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Carlos? I mean, we were talking previously about like the 8 Can't Wait campaign, and some of the things it includes is banning chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning before shooting, duty to intervene, ban shooting and moving vehicles, require use of force continuum, and require comprehensive reporting. I mean, it seems like really low-hanging fruit to say that some people are saying, like, no, we need to aid to abolish, and so a lot of the conversation about dismantling altogether and, like, kind of reconfiguring and figuring out what public safety looks like and how we can be proactive as opposed to reactionary, given the long history of corruption, cronyism. We've had brown people die here in Santa Ana by the police department, in Anaheim as well. Folks like Genevieve and Donna and Teresa Smith and so many other that have fought locally and that have died at the hands of the police have been calling for these things and have not had their them really come out with any kind of real justice or reform. So I mean, what is it going to take for us to really have it in this moment?
I think the answer is really on the people, Jose, and I think that the political class of Santa Ana clearly, it's not that it has failed us, it's that they have never had intention to have meaningful quote unquote right reforms. I mean, the 8 Can Wait campaign, those things should have been done a long time ago, right? Why are we having these conversations right now? That it should be having conversations around, we need to purge police officers out of the departments. We need to purge, we need to go through those lists and understand, to the extent in which the police unions and police officers have protected each other. That is the extent of the corruption. And I agree with Albert, we need to completely dismantle the system, specifically for Santa Ana as well, because it's so rotten. It's rotten to the core. I mean, we can do, some type of reforms around like how police react to certain incidents, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you have a police department that has functioned kind of like an occupying military force in the city. It doesn't change the fact that it's how it has been in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to add, like, I've been on a ride along, and almost all of these stops were police interacting with homeless people in a way that didn't require violence or force of any kind. And I mean, do you really, what confuses me is, do they want to do that job? Because why can't we handle that a different way? Right? Like, and I'm talking on multiple levels. Like, we stopped taking care of like people's mental health. And I mean, you don't have to treat every situation. It doesn't require a gun to handle every situation. And I don't know, Albert, do you have like, how else could we provide for these situations without doing that? I mean, do you have any ideas on that end?
Yeah, having a response team, having counselors, social workers to respond to those. Most of the calls are not for violent issues, so they're not needed as much. I mean, personally, I lived here all my life, and not once have I ever needed a police officer to help me, or anybody in my family. And there's a lot of residents, here that really never called the police, ever needed them. So what I'm saying is that, if we start, dismantling this police force that's become like a military, they try to keep us, in control. We need to make change, and the change that we're out there protesting almost every day, every weekend. We cannot stop that. We need to continue that, because what happens with a lot of campaigns like this, we go into another issue, and then this one starts dying out. So, what we're doing now so far is sustaining, but how long? Don't know. It's up to the people.
Yeah. And I mean, here's a question for you, Carlos. I mean, this seems to me that don't we have to get involved into local politics? Because like, even if you wanted to do a grassroots, like say a Black Panther style community watch program, the police are still contending for your territory of public safety. So at some point you will contend with them. And don't we have to take the council, or what's your take on it, Carlos?
No, of course we need to have some type of, we need to have political power, right? If we don't have political power, we cannot issue political consequences. And I think that, one of the things is, every campaign elections cycle, you hear, the words of public safety and supporting the police officers. And you hear that from almost every single candidate running for, whether it's for city council or for mayor.
Right.
And that's the problem, right? That we continue to, that there's such an embedded, quote unquote, public safety culture within our communities here that we need to challenge that, right? And the way that we do that is by having candidates that come from the grassroots, candidates that come from the people, and that are going to say clearly, that are going to say no to police union, no to police money, and that yes to like police accountability, but not your typical like, let's put together, some coffee with a cup type of community relations, right? We don't need that. That is that enables more violence towards communities. That we need to have candidates that are gonna say, yes, we're gonna put some type of police commission that has subpoena investigatory powers, and that yes, as a matter of fact, we're gonna work towards like defunding police, right? And defunding police shouldn't be a scary word. It should be like a common sense word. Like our communities have for so long been neglected. They have, completely been looted, right, from the city budget by the police union. And so I think those are the conversations that we need. Those are the stances that we need from candidates that will say, we're for the people. And that's the answer, and I think we need to build towards that in one lane, right? Because that's we're talking about electoral process.
Right.
But we need to take it back also in that we need more popular uprisings in the city, and really comes that back to giving power to the people.
Yeah, I've often wondered about LA has like neighborhood council and things like that, even lower levels of government. I've talked to some people up there. They say it doesn't make a difference, but I mean, I'm thinking about what Albert's saying. Like he and his neighbors have not needed to call the police. I mean, maybe it's because your community knows each other, or your family that can support each other. Like if we have strong neighborhoods, that provides safety. So, yeah. Go ahead, Jose.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that's where making sure that housing policies that don't displace, but make sure that, communities can stay, build that social fabric, that community character that then, allows for neighbors to speak to each other, to communicate with each other when things do happen, because, things do happen, and I mean, it's like crime is tied in with poverty. And, and if we're not addressing the issues of poverty, which, historically has been tied into systemic racism, why some people got loans for homes and why others didn't. And, the amount of, how, people have to live cramped in, homes, several families in one home in order to like afford rents, it's tied in. So it's like, we address public safety by addressing the economic crisis and supporting, anti-displacement policies like just cause evictions, like rent control, but that can allow for communities to be better organized, as the one that Albert mentioned has. I read on a defang the police, and yeah, so that Gilbert's mentioned that. So like, yeah, it seems like we do need folks to to handle, I mean, there's mafias, there's there's cartels, there's like human trafficking, there's all sorts of ills of the world. But I would imagine that if we were to, go after poverty in a way that it would limit that, and also be able to be more proactive with our youth, right? And investing in youth as opposed to doubling down on like, we just need the answer to all the problems is we need more police. And if you don't fall in line with that, then we're going to recall you or do some really bad negative mailing against you, which was the case with Roman Reina and Sarmiento not too long ago, and recently with the recall of Ceci, but also the attempted recall of Villegas. So that's the problem, right? Now we're constantly having to fight. It's like, but and last thing I'll say is like, I think the one good thing that's happened, or many good things that have happened, is that now things that we have been fighting for, like you mentioned, Carlos, for a long time, are starting to happen very quickly. And all to say, like, why didn't this happen a long time ago? It's like, well, we needed a grassroots movement that were just like saying, like pushing and pushing to be able to finally make them bend to the will of the people whose taxes pay for their salaries and pay for their lawsuits when they kill and maim our people. This, the system is all messed up. And so I think there's a lot to be said about dismantling, but there's one case that's happened right in Seattle, I believe Oregon, where they have voted to dismantle the police and restart it up again. So, but I mean, is that a pipe dream here in Santa Ana? Is that, could that happen?
I think anything that leads to a war without police is probably the pipeline for Santa Ana. But no, I think going back to the issue that Albert raised earlier around like the actors, right? And I think that for a long time, a lot of us, and probably Albert longer than many of us here combined, have raised the issue around like who are these political actors that are behind ensuring the status quo Santa Ana, which is pro-police and corruption and all of that. And I think that it hasn't been until recently, until the last 2 years, where we have seen a specific focus on the police union in Santa Ana and the role that it has played. And it has to do actually, part because of the immigrant rights movement in Santa Ana. And I remember the fight that we had in 2016 when, we were trying to get the city of Santa Ana to end its immigrant detention in the city jail, which the city was profiting from, about $10 million, I believe, a year. And the money was used to keep police jobs in the jails, right? And this is a campaign, keep in mind, that was started since 2010 with the May Day Coalition, with Chicanos Unidos, with Albert, with some other folks that were involved, right? And it really took about 6 years until it picked up, right? And then you had the issue around, the detention on trans women, undocumented trans women in that jail, right? That really unified and intersected different movements into saying, we're gonna take on this jail. And it wasn't really until then when we start seeing, the police and their families and the police union as a whole showing up to city council and speaking on keeping that jail, right, and keeping that contract, which was ridiculous. And this wasn't really until then, until we started to see the police union become more publicly aggressive, right, like more outwardly, and specifically like trying to intimidate council members into like, keeping the ICE contract. And when we actually, when ICE decided to shut down the jail, what you ended up having is that Jerry Serrano specifically backed a political plan in 2016 to oust or to replace council members with police-friendly backed candidates. And specifically, something that I remember a council member Tinajero back then, went public with was calling on the quid pro quo that the police union had engaged with, which essentially they asked candidates to specifically fire the chief of police and fire the city manager in exchange for campaign contributions for their elections. So we talk about accountability and justice, right? And where was the district attorney in all this, right? Where was the state attorney in all this, right? These were clear cases of corruption in which they were simply brushed aside to the side. And so now I'm glad that there is the issue of focus on the police union and Jerry Serrano and the fact that they play so much role in politics. But these are the things, right, that people were hesitant to speak about back then.
And speaking of politics, the current politics right now, we have 5 council members that are POA. They've got put in there by POA, and the 6th one that just got in, I don't know where she's at right now, but most likely she's going to swing towards POA. The only one that's in there is Vince Sarmiento. He's been the POA tried to remove him in 2016. And he's the only one that has been able to beat them back that's still there. And so, these are the kind of things they can remove, recall, or get candidates to go against them. But there are some that do, or there are very few, or just one that has made it through this process.
Oh, but what do you give Juan Villegas any credit for opposing the raises in last year?
I do give him that, but I think with this whole having a police oversight, I don't know if he's going to support that. And if it does, it's going to be very weak. It's not going to have subpoena powers. And what they're going to do, they're going to push it for months. Just like when Michelle Martinez started at first to do research and all this, and it died. So we're going to the same process. A good tactic is to push it, and then the process stop, and this whole issue is over. And so, Bracera and Villalobos, which are POA puppets, that's what they're doing. They're going to say, okay, let's look into this. Let's see what we need. We know what we need. We don't need to do research and all this. So, call them out. Tell them, do it in 1 month. Put it out today, and then 1 month, go for a vote and see where everybody stands at. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
No, I agree with Albert. You have different community groups like ACLU, folks that have already reached out to the council, this current and past council, on how to get it right, and they have not done anything. And so there's no more waiting time.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep asking this a difficult question because the answer is hard for me too. But I mean, do you see the recall of Ceci as a bad sign? I mean, doesn't it say the public doesn't really care about the influence of the POA on our elections? And if that's the case, I mean, are they going to run? Is the POA going to run a better district campaign than the grassroots in the next election? Or?
A lot of it was bullshit. You know, it was not about. Well, to them, they didn't say anything about the salaries. They were saying that she was anti-immigrant. She was with Trump, you know, all this bullshit. And they're very good at that because they spend a lot of money on that. They can move the whole narrative to something else and get that person removed. So, you know, and that puts a scare on the other city council people and say, well, we better not say anything because they're going to go after us too.
Right.
So, you know, look at what happened to Tinajero. You know, when he spoke out and stuff, you know, he got threatened. They were able to threaten a sitting city council and get away with it, you know? So when I say they're corrupt, they are corrupt. So they need to be dismantle the police and along with the POA because they don't have members, they no longer exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and how many of the police officers actually live in Santa Ana, you know, and are tied to the, you know, issues of communities? Like, so
maybe one.
It's not a lot.
They could care less about whether or not we can afford their raises or anything. Like they just,
True.
you know, they just want to get that money and then we can figure it out later. So yeah. And I mean, you know, I remember, you know, one of the candidates previously talking about how the Police Officers Association would make them sign a contract saying that they would basically be their puppets, you know, and support raises and, you know, like be against any kind of police oversight with teeth. And, you know, it's like you had to sign that in order to like be considered for an endorsement. Like this is the type of politics these people are playing. And we're supposed to like think that they're just like this, you know, like, I don't know, like, you know, community cop. Did y'all see that recent, what was it? I think it was Univision did a reporting about how awesome the Santa Ana Police Department is and how they like walk, you know, like their precincts and talk to the community and stuff.
Yeah,
did y'all see that? I was like, who?
I saw them. They were filming in my neighborhood just like last week, and I went out to go ask what they were doing, and they're like, "Yeah, we got some money for community policing," and so you know, they were filming pairs of two officers going door to door, knocking on doors, and I'm like, "I've never seen this shit. When did this start? Like, for you to film it to show people? Like, what are we paying for them to make propaganda? Sorry, but I mean, what does that tell you about what the chief is doing? I mean,
what did you see the one with the SWAT truck? On the side of the truck had something about what was it, Carlos? Census.
Census.
You know, census on the SWAT team. You know, on a SWAT truck.
They had a parade around the city with a SWAT truck to promote the census, and in the time when the issue of fucking police brutality is on, you're kidding me, you know?
Wow, yeah, they're pretty tone deaf.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for them to like do like smoke signals with the SAPD helicopter and stuff, and I mean, like, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I won't talk about my issues with that damn helicopter flying every night over my house. I was like, really? Every night? Really? Horses here? Why?
You see, at one time when I was a commissioner for the city of Santa Ana for about 8 years, they came in, the police came in and asking for, the budget was like $1 million, and they were asking for $600,000 to support the helicopter program. And so, you know, we questioned them on how much. I mean, I can't believe how much they charge a minute to fly up there. They charge the taxpayers. I don't have numbers with me right now, but back then I did.
Expensive.
But anyway, so they we fought it through the Human Relations Commission. We dropped it down to, I think it was 400,000 the next year, and then 200,000. And then one day we went out to go for a vote, and the police helicopter flew over my house. The same day we're going to vote for that for the money for the police. And I got to the city hall, and then they flew over to city hall in a helicopter, trying to intimidate me. So when I went in there, I told them, you know what? We're going to vote zero. We're going to vote zero for them. And we did. And we stopped that money coming from it was called the, it was a bond from the, I forgot the name of it. But anyway, it was money that was going to the homeless and other recreation and other stuff. So they were taking that money and using it for a helicopter program.
Yeah, sounds like a story we just covered. So not shocked. There's also
a lot of stories, but that's just one.
I bet.
Through the years, we a lot of issues happen and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think going back to the issue that you were all mentioned earlier is that the council members and the police union are waiting for definitely for the moment to wear off. And I think this is all of everyone's responsibility, right? A lot of us have been watching this develop, but also organizers and community organizations is really to continue that political education and information to our communities around that. We cannot let the police union, but also any other big interest for that matter in the city, to continue to run City Hall. And one quick thing that I wanted to raise as a main red flag is on the Measure X and the tax and the new tax revenue, right? Where essentially most of the money is about earmarked towards public safety. It was earmarked way before the revenue came in, and it was more of as an excuse, right, to complement the police raises that the city council approved, the $25 million. So that we whether it's the cannabis tax, whether it's Measure X, and I'm hearing that there's talks about another bond later on, right? Is that we continue to say is the police keep getting a big piece of the pie, and any other services, right? Whether it's youth services, senior services, or any other services that improve the quality of life of our communities is usually thrown on the back. They might say, you'll get 10% or 5% of the allocation, but reality is a big chunk of it continues to go to police, and that is the problem, right? The problem that we need to continue to engage with communities and build that people power, not only in the electoral process, but also continue to give hell. We need to continue to raise hell, and that if status quo is going to be maintained, we're going to continue to disrupt business as usual.
It has to happen. And so, I guess one of my questions now is it sounds like it would be good to have a slate of candidates, anti-POA candidates, and I'm not sure, what's happening exactly, but is the POA going to be able to run a better district level campaign here, even though we won that?
We need to look at is who's endorsing these candidates? Where's that money coming from? That's the important part. If we continue electing these POA puppets, it's going to get worse. We're going to have what I call the POA, what they call, that's what POA stands for. Dang. And that's the ultimate game, is to control our city. And again, like I mentioned with Jerry Serrano, he's a puppet. He doesn't come out here. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't know what to say. He has somebody behind him who pushes him, who tells him what to do, what to say. They might kick him out. He might be his last year this year and try to, maybe let things simmer a little bit. But there's still somebody behind him. So it cannot be reformed. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, it's I have a hard time with the conversation, but because it's really asking for people to re-envision a new world, and what it could look like, as opposed to like, things are the way that they are and there's no way to change them, and so like education and like politicizing our community to let them understand why things are the way that they are, and that they could be changed, that they don't have to be the way that they are, you know and never forget that Jerry Serrano was caught in a DUI and was let go
Ridiculous.
by I believe the Westminster Police, and I think probably Tony Rackauckas had something to do with that. But man, like Tony Rackauckas, that guy, I could not have been happier to get rid of him, because speaking of like holding police accountable or holding elected officials accountable, that's literally his job. And
his wife works for the DA. Did you know that? Serrano's, his wife works for the DA. So that had a lot to do with that. So it wasn't just through caucus.
Yeah.
Because he was busted. They had him, Westminster wanted to prosecute, and the DA said no.
Yeah.
That web of corruption.
Speaking of DA, a lot of these young people that get killed here in Santa Ana, they were killing at one time, I would say 7 to 8 young men. And to 2012, when the uprising in Anaheim happened, it stopped a lot of these killings. The following year, nobody was killed in Anaheim or in Santa Ana after killing 7, 8 every year. The following year, there was one. But ever since then, those numbers never went back up again. So when they tell you that unrest or be peaceful and all that doesn't, because the other way doesn't work, well, that uprising worked. There's a lot of young men that are alive in Santa Ana and Anaheim because of that uprising.
That is very, very true and very important to bring into the context of this conversation. It's like folks have been fighting for this for 10 plus years. There's literally, I believe, what's Nick Belanak, this officer that's killed like several people, in Anaheim, and he continues to be employed by, at the Anaheim Police Department. Like, imagine how it feels like to be a mother of a child and like see this dude, like, still. And I believe Donna's, one of those mothers, so it's like, it's tough. It's really horrible. And that's why, that's like you mentioned, uprisings, like they push the envelope in ways that, peaceful marches just seem to not, it's like people always it's like patronizingly say like, well, you just got to vote. Like, that's not
That's not the only way.
And in and of itself is not going to change shit.
The POA contract is up in July. All this bullshit about them being good guys and saving us money and, all this. They don't want that contract to come up in July because they know we're going to put pressure on them. So they're pushing it for another 6 months. So, you always have to look at what they're doing. And I think a lot of it goes back to what I mentioned in the beginning, was putting a think tank together and figuring out who the players are, and always being a step ahead of them. So, it's our duty. It's our duty as residents here in Santa Ana to be able to get our city back from the POA. That's
right. I want to mention one thing before we maybe talk a little bit about another issue about the police force at the Santa Ana Unified School District. But I want to uplift the story of Jesus Aguirre, who was, this young, teenager that got arrested for giving somebody a BB gun. He got sent to Pelican Bay, like with heavy hitters. I believe it was for life, like 25 to life. And that man, Jesus Aguirre, the father of his son, Jesus Jr., fought for years for accountability, for justice, and for release. And that, when a few years ago, and Carlos, you and other folks in the community, I know we're very much, part of that campaign to release Jesus, and ultimately got him a pardon. That is one example of, and that young man, he's now like, he learned coding in school, and he was, what was it? Some app, he was part of, his is a success story. how many more success stories could we not have had, if we wouldn't be so quick to criminalize and institutionalize our young men and women, and and folks, all from transgender folks, and everyone, so that always lets me know how you have to continue to fight if you want to have even a chance of justice, but also how it just takes a village. It takes a community to really to promote that. But so in that conversation, then the question around school to prison pipeline and what that looks like in Santa Ana and other cities always comes up, so why does the Santa Ana Unified School District have its own police force? Who pays for that?
And that's a very good question. And that's what we're looking at also, is why we have a police force in our city when other cities don't have it. Well, they start the kids young, instead of bringing them to counselors when they have issues and stuff, the police get involved and they already have contact. They're already getting written up for, criminal or whatever activities. And that's where the pipeline starts, is at schools.
Yep.
So, and there's been discussion of dismantling or the police, the school police. And that's probably the better way to go with that, because there's I remember when I went to school, there was like security. There was I guess what they call now resource officers, or they call them DSO. And what they do, they're more of a people person. They were students. They walk with the students. They get along with the students. And what I saw personally was that they even walked around picking up trash and just getting along with the schools and just having a good relationship with the teachers, the students. And that's what's needed in these schools. But when you have police that go in there with a gun and enforce laws inside our schools, then these kids are going to react. And they already start hating, because you see a lot of these protests, a lot of them are young students. A lot of them are young because of this police force that are in the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of the rage, of people having to deal with police, whether it's in gang injunction communities or at the police, as I mentioned before, our kids, in affluent communities, their kids go to rehab. Our kids go to juvie or jail. But yeah, Carlos, what does that look like? You work with youth in the past, and so this issue of school to prison pipeline is definitely one that's near and dear to your heart.
I remember with Abraham and Santa Ana with women of color, they worked really hard to find alternatives, right, to punishment, and result of many of the mothers and other organizers, right, that were involved in during that time. They were able to get the school district in Santa Ana to approve funding for restorative justice, right, and that was a huge step, right, because it in a way started to diminish the role of police, but also reduce the contact of youth with police. But on the question really is the solution is not to have no more school police on campus. And that's really where it comes down to, right? And whether or not we have the political will again in the school board to do it, that's a question. But not just the political will, whether or not we're gonna back the elected officials that will stand up and say, we're gonna get rid of the school police. We also gotta come and protect those elected officials that will take the stance. And again, it goes back to we have the duty, everyone that is knows about this issue, to ensure that we are organizing for that long term.
And also, right now, with the budget cuts, they're going to get rid of teachers. What would you get rid of, teachers or police? Those are the questions that are going to be happening soon. So I would look into what's going on there. And right now, they're working overtime. There's no school going on right now, and they're working overtime. What are they doing right now? What is their reason to be there?
With the police are working overtime now?
Yes, they're working. They're getting overtime pay, and then they're also during the summertime when there's no school.
I imagine they're just patrolling random SAUSD Zoom meetings to make sure no one is flashing any kind of controversial symbols.
But and I'm sure they're patrolling to see if any break-ins to schools or whatever. Somebody might steal a computer, but all this millions of dollars we're spending to protect this computer or this broken window or whatever it is, doesn't justify the cost that we're paying for these cops.
Yeah. I imagine that's a difficult fight to have, because, this all goes back to the question: what's the appropriate role of a police department if you're going to have one? And there was that interesting study I saw about like how young people, your brain really fuses around 25. And so your impulse control improves drastically after that. So it's like, should we really be treating kids who have not fully developed their like mental capacity or psychological ability or whatever it is, psychological development? Should we really treat them like criminals? Should the police treat homeless people like criminals, or people that have mental illness or drug addiction issues as criminals? Like, why do we have to criminalize everything? And it really, when you're talking about taking away like these jobs, like those people are going to defend their jobs, those union members and stuff. They make very good money. And that maybe that's another part of the problem. Going back to these unions, like the unions aren't just powerful here, right? Haven't they been part of movements from the decades in the United States that have caused some of these problems?
I think there's a difference between unions and associations. Unions are paid by employers, and associations is public money. So I won't consider them as actually unions.
I see.
And the other thing is that we need to have really good, I think there's overall national also conversations around having conversations with our allies from labor around the role that police unions play in undermining every single progressive cause that we are fighting for. The labor, the labor movement is an essential part for social justice, but we gotta stop looking the other way and really have those conversations with labor around, like, should police unions exist? Should Border Patrol union exist? Right? Should ICE union exist? These are entities that have caused so much harm to our communities. And again, like, how do you reconcile all of that, right? And the labor movement. And I think that those are the hard questions to have.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, those are tough conversations to have. And it's something that, unions are gonna, or labor federations are gonna have to see. It's like, are they really with us? Are hashtag not all unions? Yeah, Ceci says unions are the problem. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a right wing talking point.
Some union.
Yeah, like through, at the end of the day, like, I think, I see building trades and I see, unions like the POA really going above and beyond to just hurt the community, like be like, we want this, and even if it comes at the expense of the community, like, and anything that could hurt their bottom line, like that's not gonna fly. One clear example in Santa Ana, the district elections conversation. I'll never forget that. Yeah, Michelle Martinez like failed us, and did not vote where we could have had district elections already, so I'll never forget that from her. For as much as she wanted to include everything, that she wanted to, it's like, no, we need this now, but she didn't, and now she's gone. Anyways, but also the police officers, the POA's lawyer, along with Miguel Pulido, did everything that in their power to run out the clock, because they were just so smart, legally to make it so that we couldn't have it in the moment that we wanted it. This is what we're talking about when it comes to like their overreach and their meddling, that derails freaking democracy in our city, and more investment in youth and more community benefits, and like, the list goes on and on. Like we're constantly having to choose between like, it's like, between like paying them even more than 50+% of the budget, and that coming at the expense of our community. This can't continue. We must figure out a new way, and I feel very hopeful in this moment as the youth and all these people are taken to the streets and demanding accountability and a new vision for public safety in across America. But there's the city, the cities, but then there's the sheriffs, and then there's ICE, and then there's the Homeland, the Department of Homeland Security, and there's all these, law enforcement now that they have just grown to a level that I feel like we're under attack as a community here in America with this bloated investment in criminalizing, and militarizing our communities. And we've seen that in display. It's like we're fighting against this, and you put on your your cool little your militarized freaking Humvee, and and your riot gear. It's like,
Jose, have you noticed that now?
Why?
If you notice now that before it was violent, supposedly violent, and now it's peaceful. It's the reason for that is because the police were the violent ones. They're the ones that are attacking the protesters, provoking the protesters, and now they changed strategy. They're stepping back. They're not getting near the protesters, so there's no fights,
Right.
And then when they talk about outsiders coming in and starting trouble, have you looked at the police? How many outsider police there are? They come from every city. Those are the outsiders, not us.
Don't even get me started with that. And remember the first protest that happened in Santa Ana during in solidarity with Black Lives Matter is the police department in Santa Ana showed up with riot gear and militarized vehicles, and they clearly sent one message to the protesters, which was, we are gonna engage with you on violence. Right? And I think I get really upset when I think about this, and what Alvaro was mentioning. It's about the double standards of how they always treated Santa Ana youth specifically. We looked at the protests in Garden Grove, we look at the protests at Westminster, we look at protests that happened around the city, and people were praising them as peaceful protesters, the right way to protest, beautiful and all that stuff. But when it came to Santa Ana and Santa Ana youth that first night, no one came out. A lot of those same people that praised those peaceful protests did not come to defend Santa Ana youth. And there's no difference, right? And the police are the ones that escalate with the violence, are the ones that actually have the legal authority to respond with violence. But what they did to Santa Ana youth, essentially, they run them over. They were shooting rubber bullets directly at their faces. The standard procedure is that you shoot at the ground so it bounces, but no, they were shooting directly at their faces, right? And so when I see all this beautiful talk around the protest and the right way to protest, and I think about the double standard that always gets in Santa Ana youth, that's something that we gotta question. We have to be critical about that. And then the last thing before we forget on the Santa Ana Police Union is that we must not forget the intersection of policing and immigration systems, and never forget specifically in 2014 when 3-4 Santa Ana police officers were caught in camera beating up a young man whose name is Edgar Vargas. And they were caught in camera beating him up. He was on the ground with his hands up, and they were beating him up. And when he was on his way to the court to testify against police brutality, all of a sudden ICE pick him up, corner away from the court. Right? And for us, that was our first indication that one, not only is police covering their tracks, but secondly that they were in close connection to ICE. The fact that a young man that was beat up caught national attention, was beat up by the police, and then it was arrested by ICE. It was also a clear attempt to interfere in the case. Now you look forward now in 2019, the officers were federally prosecuted. The FBI continued the case. Right, but that's what I'm talking about, the core root of the problem, how the Santa Ana Police Department is rotten, and the police union, and the way that elected officials have always been quiet about that incident and many other instances of police brutality. And that is the problem as we think about November and elections, is that as we look at these candidates, whether incumbents or new candidates, is that we must demand the bare minimum is, again, no contributions from police union, stand up to police unions and be clearly outspoken against the abuse and the violence that the police department has enacted in our communities. Anything less than that, we should not accept any candidate that does less than that.
Yeah, my only fear on that end is that a candidate won't run that satisfies the requirement. So, I mean, maybe this is some work that could stem from this movement, is locating these people, because I mean, you got to be brave to even take this up. You know what I mean? If you really know what you're up against, you know.
Yeah, I would I kind of follow up. I take your point, Dylan, and it's very well said. But I guess I would follow up on what Carlos mentioned earlier about the need to back up candidates, and one, to run like progressive candidates and nurture them and build them up. We've seen examples of that in recent time with Carolyn. Just true grassroots energy. Being able to put folks in there, but we just need to like flex that power that much more, and to to find and run true progressive candidates on these kind of platforms, but also like to support them throughout when they do make courageous stances, because I think a lot of times not everybody and not all the time, but sometimes we push folks to take courageous stances, and then when it comes to like trying to knock on doors and getting them to get reelected or get elected, then we kind of leave them hanging in that regard. So I think that's one hope that I have in this grassroots energy, is that we continue to like not only just like push to vote, get people to vote, but also push them to like call their council members, send emails, call their Lou Correas and like national and statewide representatives, and continue to like push the envelope on all these issues, because that's the ground swelling and the base that then supports folks to take these bold stances against these special interests. Because then if they have nobody like backing them up, there's like I'm supposed to fight this behemoth. Like this guy's like got a lot of like money and a lot of power. So and I think that's that. It looks like it's going to be different this time around in 2020.
Yeah, and through our organization, Chicanos Unidos, we vet the candidates. We call it the ones that we think we might support, and we question them, and we support very few, but we do support some candidates. So we do go through that process.
Yeah, it's good work. There's a lot of fronts to work on, and
right.
Yeah, and we run our own too. I mean, we run our own candidates too, so that's also part of our political committee.
Imagine Albert for city council.
Woo!
Oh, that'd be something. What would you wear if you were on council, though? I mean, that's the real question.
Are you asking Carlos or me?
No, Albert. I'm asking you, Albert.
Well, it ain't gonna happen. So.
Okay. Well, I had another Measure X question for Carlos. So let me understand something about Measure X. Didn't that just make it so more money went into the general fund, or is that so? And in the laws written, it's not required to be spent in any particular way.
I mean, the ballot language says that the money should be used for 9/11 calls, response time, youth services, homelessness, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But then towards the end, it says, and it can be used for other unrestricted purposes. So that's the problem, right? It goes to the general fund. There's no real way of tracking how the money is spent. I mean, you can do an alignment, right, and say, well, this is how funding is being spent aligned to the ballot language that we have. But the reality is that it goes into that whole of unrestricted funding. And the main thing that we recently submitted a report to the Santa Ana City Council. We raised the issue around that the most of the money went to public safety, and specifically it went to cover the police races, and it specifically went to cover also more positions for the police. So again, it's like the voters were told one thing, and in the way that it's working out is maintaining the status quo, which is funding for police.
That's interesting. And can go
you look at the line item for youth investment or youth specific allocation is less than $1 million out of the $60 million that they were expected to get.
Right, and hope they spend the allocated money as well. And maybe that touching on another issue, like you just mentioned, it might pay for new positions in the police department. Some of this money is.
There's a again, like it's hard to track Measure X money because again, it's unrestricted. But the reality is that it was more pretty much used as a shield fund to funnel more money specifically to cover the pensions of police and again the contracts of police.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe if you know a little bit about the pension problem here, maybe our audience should hear that. I mean, I think it's pretty serious compared to how much attention we actually give it.
I mean, the Measure X tax was supposed to get the city out of the fiscal crisis that we were already having even before COVID-19. And one of the things that is concerning is that we're looking at the 10-year outlook, right? And in 10 years, the Measure X is going to sunset. It's going to end. It was only a 10-year measure tax. And what we're seeing is that in 10 years, even as we hit the mark, is that the number of expenses or the amount of money that the city is going to be expending is going to be more than the actual revenues that we get from taxes. So we're going to be in a crisis in 10 years. We're going to be in a serious crisis where, again, what's going to be in the chopping block are the embarrassing community programs that maintain the quality of life of our communities. And what we're going to see again in 10 years is if things don't change, is again, police continuing to be maintained at that status quo. So that's the problem, right? We're not out of the fiscal crisis, and as a matter of fact, we're heading towards one.
Yeah, and I mean, just so the audience recognizes this, that the pension debt obligation or the pension obligations are proportional. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're proportional to the salaries that we pay employees. So who has the highest salaries in our budget?
Well, that question is very clear.
It's the police. And actually the second highest pool of money is it used to be the corrections officers' salaries was the second highest pool of money. So I mean, when those raises happened, double it or whatever, it's probably more because the pension was probably paid for the entire retirement of the person. So yeah, it compounds badly.
Who has a pension anymore these days?
Yeah, man. Should I have gotten into the SAPD then?
Are they hiring? I'm just kidding.
Albert's not laughing.
Yeah, see,
there is a line. There is a line somewhere.
He's like, I'm leaving now.
First, yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to mention one thing before I forget. In Anaheim, there's a cop. His name is Nick Benelak.
Yeah. I mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, he has already killed 3 people, and four now. Let's say he killed 4. But when he killed 3 people, they promoted him to SWAT. Of all places, after you kill 3, you put him in SWAT. And when he got into SWAT, he killed the next person. He shot another guy coming down the stairs with no weapon. So this is, you have serial killer cops. This is a good example of one. The DA has not gone through the case yet, and this is something that we need to watch what happens with this killer cop. If they're going to prosecute, what Spitzer going to do? He promised that he was going to take care of dirty cops and stuff. So I think we need to watch this case and see what happens with this cop.
Oh yeah, and maybe you can answer this for me, but I mean, I think, doesn't the union, they vigorously defend their clients, right? I mean, the association. Oh yeah, and don't you recall when the pot shop raid happened? Their lawyers sued the city of Santa Ana to say that they didn't have the right to share that information or the video surveillance information because it was private. So they'll take any and all measures. I mean, guess why everyone's afraid to mess with them? They'll go above and beyond.
They have a Bill of Rights here in a lot of states, but in California that protects them. So that Bill of Rights is something that we need to get it removed, because again, they don't need to, basically testify or show any records of what they've done in the past. Even felonies, they don't need to show. So when they get moved from one place to another, when they possibly get fired, then they don't take that record with them. So they get hired somewhere else and they do the same, criminal act or even, possibly kill somebody or whatever it was. But that Bill of Rights needs to, it's done. It was done by what's his name? The governor, Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown, a Democrat, that put the Bill of Rights back in 1976. And then you have Clinton, another Democrat, you know, who put this other, who hired 100,000 police, was promoting that he was gonna hire more police and more jails and so on. So when we talk about the Democratic Party helping us and stuff, they're the ones that cause a lot of these problems that are here. So I just like to know that. And I'm not saying, you know, vote Republican, hell no, but these Democrats ain't much better.
Right. Yeah. Good point on that. And, you know, and so like that's important when it comes to like the conversation about vote blue no matter who. It's like, well, when Joe Biden is coming out and saying like, you know, like I'm not gonna, you know, we're not talking about the defund the police. We need to like pro fund, like extra fund the police. I'm like, that's very tone deaf right now, buddy. You are not understanding what young people are saying right now. This is not helping your cause. You know, to his credit, I mean, Bernie Sanders also came out and said like, you know, like that they should better train and pay the police better. I'm like, police are paid very well. Pensions, you know, health insurance. Like I'm not getting that. So, you know, I love Bernie, but he's wrong on that. But at the same time, these are positions that Republicans, Democrats, and independents have. Like, you know, like it's, you know, outside of the political arena, they're just like, no, police good, like nurses good, like teachers good, like no, you know, like criminals bad, like right, like so it's just like fix the problem. You just need to like more police, and then all problems are solved. And like we have to like educate them a little more. It's like no, it's not that simple. And one thing, in addition to the Police Bill of Rights, that actually came out in the came up in the Supreme Court today was qualified immunity. Right, and how much protection that allows for police officers when they do make mistakes. Ultimately, we're not able to get the 4 votes for it to be heard.
So I wouldn't call it mistakes.
Huh?
I wouldn't call it mistakes.
Mistakes.
When police
right.
make mistakes.
Mistakes. Yeah, mistakes that we got to pay for. So yeah, those are expensive mistakes, right? Or you know, and just straight up lawlessness and murder. Has been rightfully was called with those, you know, to that cop that killed that shot, you know, the man in the back twice in Georgia, and the ones, you know, that killed George Floyd. We need to, you know, again, like one of the good things that is coming out of this is all of a sudden this pedestal, you know, where police were held in like these saint-like figures of our society that could do no wrong, like that has been dismantled in large parts. And so with that, then once like, you know, people like snap out of the mystique that, you know, and the mythologizing of them, we demythologize them, and, you know, we double down on humanizing the victims, regardless of what they did and whether or not they, you know, like resisted or whatever the fuck that they are constantly saying as like, you know, he deserved it, he's a criminal. And fuck Candace Owens too. I agree with Dave Chappelle. So, anyways, but yeah. So it's like we can't win when we have California Police Bill of Rights, when we have qualified immunity, even when we're trying to like hold these folks accountable. Like the law prevents us, and will continue to prevent us until we get progressive, you know, champions at the state Congress and at the Supreme Court, right? So this conversation has been amazing. We are running a bit long here.
But why don't we get your closing statements? Carlos, were you gonna add something there?
Yeah, I mean, just to close it off, again, like we gotta continue the conversations and the actions. So I'm posting on Facebook. I'm posting a link to a call to action that we're organizing as residents of Santa Ana. To tell the Santa Ana City Council, you gotta pass powerful, meaningful police oversight that has subpoena, investigatory, and discipline powers, and also asking them to completely stop any additional funding for police. And then, as a matter of fact, we need to be funded. So please follow the call to action. I know that Chispa also has a petition going on, so please follow that, sign it up. Again, it's moments like this where we shouldn't wait for just community organizations or organizers to act. It's like we must take initiative as residents of the city, because we care about the city, to continue this people power movement. So hopefully folks can join us tomorrow at City Council via phone.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Albert.
Yeah, well, Carlos, it was good to share our thoughts at the same time. So happy to see you there, and yeah, Dylan and Jose. But I'd like to end my with the quote. This is from John F. Kennedy. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when there's no cause, and there's another one that's more, and it's a quote that I heard from somewhere else, but it's when the First Amendment becomes irrelevant, the next amendment becomes relevant. And that's the scary part.
Ooh. So, strap up.
So we don't need to get there, but I do like that quote from John F. Kennedy, and you know, and I see it so true.
Totally agree.
Lastly, mad respect for Albert, because he's been doing this for as long as many of us can potentially remember. So
yeah, Albert remembers when Miguel Pulido was a good guy.
Oh yeah, oh that's right.
For 2 days.
For 2 days.
That was it. That's when he got his muffler. He got his muffler, the gentrified area. They were gentrifying his muffler shop, and we convinced him to run back then. We wanted to get a Latino person in there. Getting Latino people in there is not the solution. So, but back then we thought it was going to work, and look what hell. I've been spending all these years trying to get him out of there now. So,
it's your fault.
You're responsible. Oh no. Oh man.
Yeah. That's gonna be the obituary. Yeah, Albert was a good guy, but you know he also caused Miguel Pulido.
Thanks for Papi Pulido. Yeah.
And others too.
We're not all perfect.
So.
No.
They turn on you. They look like good people, and then they turn on you. You know, and that's happened a lot with politics, as we all see.
Yeah.
So
you gotta know the person before, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and that's almost impossible, you know. Like, yeah, it's that's always the sad tale of Miguel Pulido, like that grassroots community candidate that, like, you know, the brown guy that got into the seat with the white people and then just learned all the tricks of the corrupt white institution, and you know, and became, you know, the greatest longing-serving greatest, like, i.e., like the worst, you know, dictator, 25 plus years, Don Papi Pulido. God, we are ready for a new beginning. So
see, now we got Solorio and Claudia, you know, the same, you know, you know, when you go out there and vote and stuff, I mean, you know, they're just like Pulido. There ain't no difference. And they have a lot of years. If they get in, it's going to be hard to get them out later. So please don't vote them in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is for sure. Okay. Well, God, this was an amazing conversation. Carlos, Albert, you know, the conversation continues on Facebook, but ideally, you know, in person, in our communities, you know, face to face, with masks, you know, but very much, you know, in the hopes that we can educate our community about what you know, the issues at hand and what's at stake here for us in Santa Ana after 25 years of Miguel Pulido and you know, the city council not doing enough for the community. We can be bold and courageous and you know, see a better future for Santa Ana, Anaheim, Buena Park, and all the cities in Orange County. If you know, hopefully we're able to really capitalize in this moment. So yeah, once again, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch, no doubt.
For sure.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Good
Power
times.
to the people.
That's right.
Woo!
All right.
We're just gonna. We can talk. We can still talk.
We can. Yeah. Okay. I always feel weird when I'm like, can y'all just turn off the camera? I want to have my alone time with my brother.
Need alone time. No, we need to release our guests. It's getting late. They have things to do.
Absolutely. So we'll banter short. How you doing, Dylan?
You never ask me that. at this part of the show. Good. Yeah, no, I do like what Albert said, man. It's kind of like in response to some of the unrest and the some of it's inevitable. I mean, when the contradictions are so bad, when the corruption runs so deep and acts so brazenly in the open, I mean, what do you want people to do? They've lost all faith in the government, in our institutions. And you think, well, I mean, why can't they just be moral and not be outraged? It's just like, why did you set us up to fail? Why did you create this chemistry?
Right.
That's all.
Right. Again, to the Dave Chappelle special, he mentions about, about our bodies being capital. And when our capital is destroyed, our community members, then people are going to destroy your capital, your institutions. And so it's like that kind of reaction can only be comprehended and understood. As Martin Luther King said, riots are the language of the unheard. And so folks have been unheard for way too freaking long, but not anymore. And God bless George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Jesus, Joel Acevedo, Martin Hernandez, and just countless other people that have died at the hands of the police that have really paved the way for this moment. So Philando Castillo, Eric Garner. I mean, it's brutal. Say their names, say all their names. This is it's emotionally overwhelming. So I just want to say, how blessed and honored that we are, and we have been here, Dylan and I, to have been doing this show for 5 years, and this issue being one of the most pressing ones, and the ones that we've continued to uplift. And uplift, more importantly, those voices in the community that have been on the front lines, and have personally had their friends or their families, killed by this oppressive system. So, I couldn't be happier that we're finally seeing some serious justice.
Amen.
Manuel Diaz, yes, thank you. So, yeah, amen. So I'm getting emotional, but this is serious.
It's a serious time, man.
Yeah, man.
We can get serious on here. Fuck the audience. I'm not. Okay, I can't be though. But
well, some final thoughts. My loving
Hells yes.
Dylan.
Final thoughts. I can't wait for 4th of July to be over. Because I can't. My cat is going to have a mental break. So that's all.
Are you going to call the police on the fireworks, huh?
Oh man,
I knew it. That'd
be something. Maybe that would be one way to unite the Santa Ana populace against the police. It'd rally around like a pro fireworks message. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what it is, but I don't know why so many people right next to me have high-grade commercial fireworks at their disposal. But
you need the hookup? Just
yeah,
holler at your boy, bro.
I'm a guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Somebody's saying that maybe your cat could handle some CBD and that would help. So there we go.
That's cool. Yeah, it'll really cut into my supply. So
I was like, I need that CBD for me.
Yeah.
Screw the cat. Yeah. He's got catnip.
Yeah. I don't think catnip would help that situation, but yes. So can't wait for that. But the fireworks continue for months.
Yeah, no, it's really like I don't have cats and dogs, so but I feel for the folks with feline children and and dog parents.
Fur babies.
Yeah. So I was talking to my friend. It's like, can you buy like the noise canceling things for dogs? It's like, yeah, but they can't keep them on. So like that's the new idea to figure out. But it's like, that's a the constant question between civil liberties, right? Freedom and like does your freedoms hamper on others? Because if you go to like I don't know other cities, they're like, you blow those things, that's $1,000 that you owe to us, suckers. So, I don't understand why we just ended the show on like fireworks and stuff, but I do feel you in that. Like I'm like, it's 1:00 in the morning on Wednesday. Really? Like a firework right now? And not even just like a choo choo choo. It's like
boom. Yeah, it's like I don't get the ones that are just the explosion and it's no visual. It's just the sound. That one's especially fun for whoever's doing it. Not for me. No, I don't mind it. I just worry about my cat. That's all. But you want to have a serious closing?
All right, let's do it. Final thoughts.
Defund the police is a good thing. And I mean, my interpretation, it's we're reimagining public safety. Why do we have to send warriors to do anything a person needs to call the government for? It's like, I mean, they're like the interface for a large amount of public interaction with the government. I mean, who else are you calling on the city government level when you need help? I mean, maybe there's a few, maybe utility agency or something maybe you call, but why were you resigned to just allowing like some military style way of handling every possible situation? Why can't we just make a new department that handles things differently? I mean, they did a bunch of this shit in the 70s with like Ray Davis's police department, like basically making it so they had officers that went out to do work that didn't need guns. And I mean, it doesn't have to be done within the police department. It'd probably be better for a new department to be established. And for that money the defunding comes from moving the money out of military reactionary style policing into, I mean, you'll still have some reactionary stuff you have to do, but it doesn't have to be like necessarily violent, or you know what I mean? Because like at some point, like if there's like a homeless person sleeping in your stairwell and you're a building owner and you're not comfortable, maybe you don't call the police. But I mean, what I'm saying is like that's still reactionary, right? Because you're not helping that homeless person. Like we need proactive solutions preventing homelessness. But if we need to do reactionary stuff, I mean, come on, we can't be sending people, the executioners around. I mean, warriors basically around to handle it. Like, does it make sense? Like, I think that makes sense to most people. But
yeah, you're absolutely right. And a lot of these folks are coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, decades of war, dealing with PTSD. And so they find themselves in danger. There's no let's figure out what the danger is. Like shoot first and ask questions later. So that's a serious problem in our communities when we have these folks that are dealing with these traumas and problems from war, then are tasked with dealing with our community as non-enemy combatants, and they don't. And my last thoughts is that there's been at least 2 situations and probably more where the police have been called with mentally ill people and or folks in the autism spectrum, mentally handicapped individuals. My brother has autism. My parents founded an organization 21 years ago for Spanish-speaking parents of autistic children. And in these 2 situations, the police were called to try to help to handle this, teenage, adult child that has the mentality of a 5-year-old, but looks like, they're an adult. And in one of those situations, a man with autism was killed by the police in that situation when they were asking for help. Yeah. Right, and then the second one was one where, clearly, and this has been shared recently, where the guy was on his back saying like, I'm trying to help this, this person with autism back inside the house.
Right.
And rather than like try to help him assert the situation, they shot this guy, like straight shot him as he was laying on his back with his hands stretched. And the poor child with autism was there playing with his toys, like completely clueless about what's happening. and that cop took him a while to get fired. And but why is that happening? And when we, my parents and other, I think about my brother, he's 23 years old. If he were to get out of start running, and people that were to meet him and didn't understand what he was doing and what was happening, like they could call the cops. This crazy person is running the streets and taking off his clothes or whatever. And that, that could end my brother's life and other people like him.
Right.
So, we don't need the police for everything. We desperately need to, reimagine what helping homeless people looks like, what helping, people with disabilities and mental illness looks like, so that we can have people that are de-escalation first, approach, so that we can make sure that our community lives and thrives and is not, scared, to call the police, because something, when something terrible like that could happen. So much more to be said, of course, as always.
Oh yeah.
But the conversation continues, and I want to thank everybody that tuned in for the first time and was commenting and sharing, and starting watch parties. We have our shows mostly every Monday. You can now catch us on Spotify, on YouTube. If you want to just listen to us as you're driving to work or around, then definitely you'll have different ways to tune into us. But yeah, this was a very timely conversation, and I'm glad that we're able to have Albert Castillo on.
Yeah, it was great. Both great guests, done a lot of work. And I mean, Albert usually keeps a lower profile. So like he said, probably the last time you'll be on the show, but still a delight.
Totally. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, I will let Dylan get back to his liquor collection.
Right. I was organizing them.
Yeah. And I'll get back to my,
you know what I mean?
Michelob Ultra not only is 85 calories, but it's also organic.
Oh,
pay me. All right. Yes, please like us, follow us, share us, help us get
subscribe
in a year. Yeah.
On YouTube, click the bell, click that bell, get that notification.
Yeah. So I want to thank Edgar Silva for being an awesome audio video engineer. Iron Lion Media, which is his company, Iron Lion Studios here in Santa Ana. So if you want to start your own podcast or want to record your latest album, your trap album, then you can hit up us, send us a message, and we can connect you with his awesome skills. I want to thank Dylan Thompson for being an awesome co-host all these years. We're going on 6, buddy.
We're crazy.
6 years, crazy.
That's crazy. We're on YouTube.
Yeah, it's crazy how it all started. Pie. And again, thanks Hallie. Thanks, everybody that that was commenting throughout. Thanks Uncle Ben.
I know I always insult the audience, but I only do it because I love them.
Yeah. Love you. Love everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we're going to be having some awesome people on the show soon enough. Carolyn Torres, I believe, is going to be coming on the next few weeks, and community leaders that are going to be talking about their candidacy. So, please check out past shows on our Facebook page as well. You'll find all sorts of goodies. Without any more to say, from Dylan Thompson, that guy, and Jose Gloria, and all of us here at Itz Happenin family, we are signing off.
It's happening!
It's happening!
Woo! Oh.
es libertad, lo que tú vives es vulgar. Ser un esclavo sin descansar mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores. Hay que luchar para vencer este sistema capitalista.